We're talking about envisioning solutions. We love as you're joining us to go ahead and type your name and organization into the chat box as you arrive and answer the question, what is the most unique thing you have within reach of your desk right now? I have seen some very interesting answers in the chat, especially for some of us parents who are working from home, some interesting items on those desks. But we're really excited to have you all here with us today. I am Carlisha Bradley. I serve as the Executive Director of ImpactTulsa. I am joined by many members of the ImpactTulsa team. You will hear from Dr. Laura Latta, our Director of Post-Secondary Partnerships and Research today, and our panel discussion will be facilitated by Ashley Phillipson from the City of Tulsa. She's the Deputy Chief of Community Development and Policy. So I am not going to stay before you long. I'm ready to introduce the individuals that we have here to talk with us today. So this panel discussion is really talking about envisioning solutions as we have an unprecedented school year ahead of us. ImpactTulsa has constantly shared the updated guide of the wide array of school entry options that are taking place across our county. And we're in these discussions to talk about, well, what does that mean for supporting working parents, for the employees of companies, as we all pivot and shift to support our community and ensuring that our children are taken care of, safe, and are learning during this time. So by the end of this panel discussion today, we will be highlighting some concrete interventions and policies that companies have leveraged or will leverage as school begins to accommodate working parents. We'll also examine the challenges the company needs or other barriers to accommodating parents and caregivers, including equitable solutions. And lastly, we'll be addressing questions from you all, the attendees. So we want for you to put those questions in the chat box as we will be answering your questions as well. So let's get into the introduction of our panelists. I am going to have our team link in the chat box the in-depth bios of the team member, of the panelists that we have with us today so that you can learn more about who they are, their organizations. I am going to introduce them very briefly and then turn it over to Ashley for our panel discussion. So we have Amy Skeens. She's the Vice President of Operations at Bama. We are excited to hear from her today. We're also going to hear from Bailey Siegfried, Vice President of Culture, Communications, IT, and HR at Nordam. And I missed one, corporate responsibility on there too. We'll also be hearing from Denise Reed. She is a principal of DR Consulting and Community Relations. She also is at Key Personnel. So we're excited to hear from her depth of experience, especially with her HR lens. And last but not least, we have Tim Lyons. He's the president and CEO of Tulsa Teacher Credit Union, Federal Credit Union, and we're excited to hear from him today as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Ashley Phillipson to kick us off for our panel discussion.
Thank you, Carlisha, and thank you again for our panelists for taking time out of their day to join us, as well as all of our attendees. If you have any questions for the panelists, please feel free to type them into the chat box. Feel free to engage in the chat box during this time. There will be a question and answer session following our short list of questions for the panel. We will collect those questions and elevate them. So definitely drop them in the chat box. And if there are any questions out there on Facebook, we have someone watching Facebook and they will drop their questions in to us here. Panelists, I am going to ask questions as I mentioned earlier, and you will have an opportunity to answer. We will not go in any particular order, and answer as you have information. And to our audience, we invited our panelists here to elevate the thinking of a few organizations. As circumstances continue to evolve, so will solutions. So this is not a fully baked, we have everything figured out, but it's an opportunity for us to build from our peers' thinking and learning. So the first question to our panelists: how will your organization accommodate its working parents to support their children in virtual learning and or navigating child care demands? And I'll repeat that one more time. How will your organization accommodate its working parents to support their children in virtual learning or with navigating child care demands? Let's start with Bama and go down from whoever wants to follow there.
Hi, this is Amy. Yeah, that has been a top response from our team members on how to balance work with children at home, trying to homeschool there with virtual learning and distant learning. Um, One of the things that we found out that we needed to do is give them extended time off from work without any penalties. So this semester, one of the specific things that we're doing is giving them an additional 2 weeks that they can be away from work and know they have job security coming back, to take care of, child care issues or try to figure out the logistics of, their school, with their school and their children at home. So that's one thing we're doing.
Yeah, this is Bailey from Nordam. Thanks for sharing that, Amy. It's good to be amongst so many smart, wonderful people here. And I look forward to learning lots about what everybody else is doing. And I think that's one of the great things as we face lots of new experiences together is collaborating and getting together. So I think by the end of this call, I think we'll all have lots more to, or at least in our arrow quiver to try to figure this out together. So thanks for putting this on, and thanks for having Nordam and everybody here be a part of it. At Nordam, we're still navigating through it, and our first action is really to listen and understand what our stakeholders are facing. We've got about 2,500 people around the world and about almost 2,000 here in Tulsa, and everybody's situation is different. So we're trying to listen as best as we can through a company-wide survey to understand the age ranges. And we've also been doing some mapping across our people and their school districts. And each school district is different, and then each grade is different. So some of our initial approaches, we've got lots of ideas, but we're evaluating shift change and flexibility, remote work for those who can, definitely gonna allow that. And then probably add in quite a few things that we'll learn from the people right here on this panel. But our first big step is listening, then analyzing, and then figuring out what's the biggest impact on our parents.
Thank you, Bailey. Before our next panelist answers, Amy, was that time off to manage logistics paid or unpaid?
Yeah, so that's it's unpaid for the additional 2 weeks, but how we're working with them to fill their hours is we're giving leniency on our policies for how we take vacation, how they take personal time. If they don't have the vacation or personal time, then we're also working with them on those 2 weeks off if it's continuous, how they can get unemployment benefits. So it may be as much as sitting down with them and working through a computer on how to fill out the unemployment information online. So we're really trying to work hand in hand with our team members to give them the best care possible. And it's really having to learn and adapt each week as we go because the circumstance change. And so it's really trying to, I appreciate what Bailey said, really listening to the team members through weekly conversations on what they're needing and trying to adjust and adapt our policies to that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Let's hear from Tim or Denise. Any responses to that? Hi.
Yeah, thank you for letting us participate on this, and I think we're all probably sharing some of the same challenges. We have just shy of 500 employees, and we're deemed to be an essential business, so we don't have the luxury of just shutting things down. And we've had a mix of some people that are working from home and then some that have to work in the branches. We're a financial institution, and those branches are up and running and serving people with essential services. And so some folks have the opportunity to work from home, and then that then enables them to be able to help their kids as they embark on virtual learning. the thing that Bailey mentioned, that I think a lot of us are doing, is surveying our employees, finding out exactly what their situation is. It's a little bit easier for us. We only have 500 employees. To do as many as Nordam has is a bigger task, of course. But we really got drilled down to the specifics. Which employees are going to have an issue and a challenge, and then now we can then begin to look at opportunities to give them flexible hours, to maybe even reassign duties. Maybe they normally work in a branch, but they've got a situation, and we can shift them over to our call center, and then now they can work from home and assist their children with their learning experience. But it really comes down to just lots and lots of communication, staying in close contact with the employees, and it's a fluid thing too. So you have to do it constantly, because we know the schools have all been some of them have changed their mind more than once on their strategy. So it's a big job, but I think we just have to have lots and lots of flexibility.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing those examples of what you all have done, Tim. Denise, do you have anything to add on to your panelists' responses?
I think the flexibility on the schedules is probably one of the biggest ones. And we have so many different clients, kind of working with them to make sure that they're not holding as stringently to those guidelines as they have in the past. Yeah. Especially in our manufacturing facilities. So that's been one that's been a big one. Everything that we've done is really trying to figure out how we can align resources internally with the people that are working in our office, because we only have 30 employees. So we're a much smaller organization, to try to figure out and actually communicate more openly about what are the challenges they potentially are facing and how can we accommodate.
Thank you very much. We're going to shift now to our second question of the day, and that is, what challenges or unknown factors did your organization encounter regarding supporting employees with children, and how are you concretely addressing these issues? And I'll repeat it one more time. What challenges or unknown factors did your organization encounter regarding supporting employees with children, and how are you addressing these issues? Anyone can jump in there.
I'll start. I think the whole thing is challenging, just the whole COVID situation. But I think is that there's no single or 3 or 4 main solutions that can reach most of your people. It's almost like every single person's situation is unique and different. And so how we're addressing that is we're communicating to our leadership that it's time to be flexible. We have to engage and understand people's situations and work with them. And this is a time where everybody's trying to survive. Everybody is facing uncertainty, and something we want to put certainty, or something we want to offer is putting certainty in their lives that, as we go through this, we'll work with you, we'll be flexible. So we're working on communicating across the company to be flexible with each other, just like you'd want for anybody in your family. You'd hope that they had flexibility in these challenging times.
Thank you, Bailey. I'm hearing the trend. If you all pick up nothing else, this need to be flexible and agile is a recurring theme in your all's responses. Who else would like to contribute to Bailey's response?
The survey we did this week with our team members, just asking them, what are your biggest concerns with virtual school? I wasn't sure what they were going to say, but it was a little bit of a surprise. But it was Chromebooks, internet service, and supervision at home. It wasn't. And the reason I was surprised is because I know a lot of the schools are supplying Chromebooks. And so, but they still had the question of, how are my kids going to get laptops? How are they going to get Chromebooks? So where we can't always provide all the resources for them, what we've been trying to provide is where you can go. So letting them know, hey, you contact your local school, make sure that you know what grants are available and how to get funding for your needs. And also, we just learned today that Tulsa Public Schools is working with the City of Tulsa on grants for internet services. So we'll be directing, our team members on next Tuesday, letting them know that, as well as putting options up, just as simple as, hey, Cox has a internet service for $9.98, and just letting them know where to go to get the information to help support them. On supervision, which was the third top issue that they're concerned with, there's not a real great solution right now, and it'd be interesting to see how the CARES Act plays into that. However, I'm kind of wondering going forward how part-time work is going to start being more of an interest to our workforce in the Tulsa area. So part-time work, I think, is going to start being a big key factor.
Thank you very much. Ma'am or Denise?
So, Ashley, for us, we ran into a pretty big challenge from the get-go with the pandemic, in that we've been working on a year-long project to change out all of our computer systems, and so it's been a kind of a big unknown for us of whether we were able to pull that off in the middle of this. And then you add to it the complexity of parents with kids at home, and one of the things that we had to do with this computer project is that we had to actually pivot ourselves to distance learning, and so we're kind of having to take the same medicine that a lot of folks are taking, and that we wanted to protect our team, and we can't have a whole lot of spikes in cases with my organization while we're trying to wrap up this project. And there's specific deadlines and things like that we have to consider, and so back probably a couple months ago, we decided that we were going to pivot and say, well, we're going to do distance learning, and we're really proud of all of our folks for being able to make that switch. The technology people, the training folks, and so we know, some of those employees are going to be working from home, training from home on the new system, and teaching their kids or supervising their kids' experience as well. And so again, it's just flexibility at every single point, and sometimes we have to decide to be flexible at a moment's notice.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for sharing those examples of how you all responded, not only to get the work done, but and most importantly, to keep your team safe. Denise, could you close us out on this question? While we wait on Denise to join, I just wanted to share an example from United Way, who is actually using large conference rooms to allow employees to bring their students or their kids safely distanced to a facility with solid internet for employees who are on site, and they had their team take shifts to help be in the room with the students, and also supporting older students, helping younger students, and also using their resources to arrange great guest speakers. United Way is also partnering with the Opportunity Project so that people can share resources and support, and then access those at the soon-to-be-launched site, covidkidcareresources.tauw.org. And we'll put that in our follow-up information, but just wanted to surface another solution from one of our community partners. Denise, did you have a response to our second question?
I think Denise dropped off.
Not. Okay, I couldn't see her. All right, so let's go to our third question so that we can open to the audience. I hope you all are thinking about questions to ask. The last question is, how would your organization encourage and challenge other business leaders to lean into this opportunity to support our city and region? And you talked about flexibility, and if that is the direction we're going, I have some follow-up questions. So how would your organization encourage other businesses to lean into this opportunity to support our community navigating COVID?
I think it's a great testament to all the business leaders on this call right now,
Yeah.
leaning in to be on this call, participate, and discuss the challenges with one another and best practices. So, you know, big appreciation and kudos to you all on the call today. Some of the things that we've really had to make sure that we're leading with our heart. This isn't really, this is a time where we have to be focused on team member safety, and the hurdles that they're going through. And as we've been talking already, it's time for us to listen. And then after we listen, we have to, you know, be able to do something differently, remove those barriers for what the obstacles are. And so it's really just taking a minute to lead with your heart and remember that, you know, there's the business side of it, but there's the people side of it. And one of the things that we had to do up front is in manufacturing, we had a production line where people couldn't socially distance themselves. And so, you know, we reduced our line rates, you know, and removed people off the line so that they could. So that's not a business decision, it's a caring decision. And so I think that's very important in businesses to show that they care and be willing to listen and learn and then act accordingly.
That is great. I really appreciate that consideration and reminder about what it's all about. What about you, Tim, or you, Bailey? What would you like to say to challenge and encourage your fellow business peers?
Yeah, I would echo everything that Amy said, and from the very get-go on this, we decided that we were going to communicate and over-communicate with our team members. Early on, we designated a pandemic coordinator, and she's on this call, by the way, Celia Armstrong, and just done a marvelous job of communicating with our staff, and we got lots of feedback from staff who would say, you know, my spouse works for XYZ organization, and they're not telling them anything, and it's so frustrating. And so they would say, thank you for letting us know what you're doing and what you're thinking, and thank you for asking us what our opinions are and what our concerns are. And so communication is just, you know, top of the list. As we're all trying to go through this, we have tried our very best to follow our core values, you know, applying lots of grace to this situation. Everybody needs grace because we don't live in a perfect world right now. We never have, but so much so less so today. And so we just need to give folks a lot of grace to try to deal with what they're dealing with, and just focus on doing the right thing for your people. If you'll take care of your people, that will pay back in dividends so much, and will enable your organization to continue moving forward. And that's, I think, one last thing for the leaders out there, and regardless of what position you hold, if you're in a position of leadership, management in your organization, find ways to stay connected with other folks that are, you know, at your same level, same responsibilities, and be sharing those ideas. I do meet with a group of Tulsa community leaders every Wednesday morning, and we're a great source of support to one another. And as you can imagine, there's a lot of really difficult decisions that have to be made to, for the organizations that we lead. And so we've been just a great support to one another in providing encouragement and wisdom, and so it's really been kind of a silver lining to what we're going through.
That is encouraging. Thank you for sharing those words of encouragement and a challenge to us all. Bailey, what
Yeah,
challenge and courage would you like to share?
sure. I would say I really like what you said, lead with your heart. I live by that. I believe that life is about love, and leadership is the opportunity to unlock that understanding within everybody. And leadership is a chance to change one person's life. And as a family business, and Tim, you talked about values. Our values are family values. And it really comes down to, what do you want for somebody you love? You want them to be safe, never get hurt, nothing bad ever happen. You want them to be healthy, live a long life, be around here a long time, be in a healthy environment. And the rest is about securing the future. And you got to make tough decisions. And part of securing the future is stepping up in leadership. And part of leadership is collaborating, communicating. So, hats off to the 40 plus people here for taking the initiative to collaborate, listen, learn what others are doing. I've learned a lot with this call. I'll be talking with my team. I have some people on here about some of the things I've learned, and sharing information is a way to elevate the our ability to take care of others, or elevate consciousness of one another's situation. So the challenge is to lean in and listen, collaborate, and lead with your heart, like you said, and you have to take action, or else school's here, and I think there will be some really tough results coming out of business bottom lines when schools are out, people are out, absenteeism. So think ahead, because we're all going to be dealing with it. So let's collaborate and prepare the best we can.
Excellent advice. Denise, we are on one of our last of the three questions. How would your organization encourage and challenge other business leaders to lean in to this opportunity and support our city and region?
Yeah, I love everything that I've heard here. One thing that I will say is that the communication needs to be done in multiple ways and multiple delivery methods, because people receive information differently. That's been one that we've learned. And sharing tools and resources as you hear them from others with the whole staff instead of just with the individual that's asking for it, because we need to be aware of the invisible challenges and or disabilities that people are dealing with that we're not aware of and being communicated with, and addressing some of those unknowns is difficult to do. And if you're not providing that safe space for that information to be shared, providing it proactively is potentially creating a lot of back and forth, even if it's via email or on your intranet or however it's being delivered.
Thank you, Denise. We are going to shift to a couple of the questions that have been dropped in the chat box. I noticed really quickly though, Tim, you mentioned you had the pandemic coordinator. I know Bama also dedicated a team. Amy, can you quickly just share how your team was composed? Because I think that this gets at this trend of you all saying we should communicate early, communicate often with our folks, and how much they appreciate that, just so we can have a little bit more concrete examples. Amy, can you share what you all's pandemic team looks like?
Sure. I think part of being flexible and adaptable is having the right people involved. And so early on, we found that we had to have a core COVID team. And on that team is our top leaders. We've got our legal representative, our lawyer on staff on that team. We have our top HR. Operations is represented by myself. We have QA, supply chain, and a project manager. So those 6 people come together. We meet twice a week. We have a host of topics. It's anywhere from how do we help the workforce with return to school to where are the supplies for the masks. We can't get our hands on any masks. I mean, it's just a wide breadth of things that we cover. And so, but with that team, we're able to make decisions and make them quickly and be nimble so we can get back. But all of our work stems from the feedback from our team members on the floor. So once a week we have crossover, we're asking for information, they're giving it to us, and then we're taking that feedback, assembling our next steps for crossover communication and plans, and then the next week we respond to it. So it's been an evolving cycle since March. So that's how we've been operating to stay ahead. I know early on with the pandemic, a lot of the questions were around benefits. People wanted to know about their health care, how to get unemployment, how to get a COVID test paid for. So we worked on those type of policies. Now it's all about how do I have supervision at home? That came up this week, and what we're talking about today. So that's what we're working on now. So we use that team member feedback with a really core group of people that can execute, make decisions in the company, and move forward.
Thank you so much for expanding on that point. We have our first question from our audience, from Michael. How are you balancing those with children versus those without children to ensure those without children do not feel as if they're being treated differently and not receiving the same opportunities?
Very carefully. That's a tough one. I don't know if there's a good answer to it. I think you have to remind everybody that we're in this together, and some will have will carry a heavier load for a while, but the favor will be returned someday. And so I think it's a matter of just reminding everybody of those things, and we're not doing anything monetarily different. We do expect everybody to be able to handle the workload that they need to handle, and then we deal with that individually. And coworkers don't know if that's if you're not carrying your load. Managers do, but not the coworkers, especially when they're working from home. It's not an easy question.
Yeah,
No,
I
it's
think
not.
one of the great reminders is, BAMA's mission statement, but it works in a lot of different areas, and it's people helping people be successful. So where there's a need, that's where we want to try to meet the need. One of the things that is not child related, but it's working from home. And so like next week, our survey that we're sending out is about team members who are working from home. Do they have what they need? Are they feeling supported? Because working from home is a different kind of environment. And so we have team members in the plant manufacturing, and we have team members at home. And so we also ask them if they have the things that they need and feel supported, and what is it they need so we can help them. So it is a tough question though.
It's important to pull out, though, this whole attentiveness to needs. It's not just parents, what do you need, but in this unprecedented time, making sure that attention is given to all employees. Thank you for that. And if anybody has any way that they're addressing that with their company or their team, please feel free to chat that in the chat box so we can share with others. Another question we have is many businesses are connected with K-12 schools, universities, and colleges in a variety of ways, from student internships to job talks to partnerships in a variety of ways. Those connections are invaluable in preparing the next generation workforce and continuing cuts off. How do you anticipate that school and business relationships will evolve during this time if you have partnerships with said entities?
I think that they'll strengthen. I think, as we go through this together, before all this, it was kind of everybody was operating in a more formal setting, here's how we've been doing it, and we'd engage. And I think now there's more opportunity for flexibility and problem solving in a collaborative way than ever. And my team and I have experienced that with NORDAM and some of our collaborative partnership with schools. And because I think we have to solve this together. It can't just be solved alone. So I think that the result of it will be better relationships and flexibility and partnerships that will last for years to come.
Thank you, Bailey.
Yeah.
We have a question about Tim. You mentioned your team received some professional distance learning training. What were some important learnings that you had as your employees received that training and made the pivot to the new system that you could share with the group who might be experiencing some of that right now?
Yeah, in fact, that training is going on as we speak. We're scheduled to switch over the systems here in about 60 days, and so that we're right in the middle of this. But the learning team had to think about this much earlier, because we were going to train everybody in a classroom, 20 at a time, and then as the pandemic, has unfolded, and we decided that was not going to be possible without too much risk. We began to talk about the pros and cons of distance learning versus in-person learning, and it wasn't an easy decision to come to, number one, and then they had to have enough time to change over the curriculum. The curriculum had to be done differently in a distance learning mode, and so that was the biggie. We're all of our normal training is put on hold during this time because we're focused on this one initiative. But back in the spring, when the first lockdown took place, we had to switch that training over. That was the normal training of new employees, and we had to very quickly pivot over to distance learning. And we had been making preparations for this for over a year, and so it didn't just catch us totally flat-footed. We have a lot of outlying branches and people that don't live in Tulsa, and so we felt like distance learning was going to be a part of our solution. So yeah, there's a lot of planning that goes into that. There's a ton of planning, and then you've got to get feedback from the department managers on how effective it is. And you survey the new employees, and so how'd you like that? How was that experience for you? Do you think it was effective? All those questions. Sometimes the new employees don't know what they don't know, and so now we got to ask their managers, was this training any good? And so sometimes we had a gap between those two perspectives, and we had to go back and fix some things.
I really appreciate you mentioning getting feedback at multiple levels, because interpretations will definitely be different sometimes. We have one other question that I've been messaged. Is anyone offering hardship pay for frontline employees to distinguish from those whose jobs allow them to work remotely? Great question.
Bama offered a one-time hero pay, we called it, for those who were reporting into the plant. But that's what we offered at that time.
While we wait on other questions to come in, and I'm going to transition to Laura after this one, you all mentioned it's important to be flexible, and it's easy to, for leaders to say this. How are you ensuring throughout your organization that is equitably applied to different departments? How are you monitoring progress there and consistency?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't know the answer to that yet as we go into the school year, because we're still in a place of genuine discernment through that. But as we learned through it with remote work, and what we found was the only way to try to keep it as equitable as possible is to kind of have option A, B, C, and D, some consistency that allowed remote work to happen, but not just all out 50 different ways remote work was going on. So we kind of brought it down to some options, and then we created like a survey of the leaders and communicated that we were going to do these on a monthly basis, and it wasn't forever. But through communicating, we'd hear, so when one group was doing it different than another, and so our second time around at moving to remote work, we gave options instead of more of a kind of a carte blanche remote work path, I guess. I don't know if anybody else experienced that, but
that's helpful to look at how you responded during that.
What's that?
Oh, no, I'm saying it's helpful to look at that first iteration of adjusting to COVID and how we can apply that to this next phase. Anyone else have any ideas about how we ensure, equity and consistency as, different managers operate in different ways? So
Ashley, it really always boils down to the managers have to manage their people. And some employees we found were not able to manage themselves very well, very productively at home. And in some cases, not very many, but in some cases we had to bring them back to the office and say, we really need you here. And they just needed that oversight to be productive. And then we've had some that have just done really, really well. And in some cases, we would even say that they have been more productive at home than they were in the office. And so it's really kind of a, person by person deal. As early on, our focus was, well, let's get people at home. I only have about a third of my workforce working from home because we're a retail establishment. We had to run the branches, and so the people that worked from home, we really focused on, okay, they're working on this big project and we can't afford to lose them. They have underlying health conditions, and so let's get them home to protect them. They've got childcare issues, and so we tried to prioritize based on all those things. And then when the lockdown ended, and we were kind of like, oh great, we can start bringing people back, and we did that very slowly, and then the cases began to spike, and then everybody said, well, we still got to do work from home. So then we began rotating people and giving people turns. And then again, this was mostly our back office folks. The branches didn't necessarily have very much of an option to do that. And so what it's done for us is it's really made us completely rethink disaster recovery planning. And once upon a time, our thought process was that we had to have a separate facility somewhere else in case something happened to our main facility, a tornado or whatever. And now we're thinking, well, no, we just have people work from home. But in order for that to be effective, you need to rotate everybody so that everybody has a chance to do it and make sure they can work out the kinks. And so, there's been lots and lots of lessons learned out of this that have, again, been a silver lining to the pandemic. You hate to have to go through a pandemic to learn some of those lessons, but there it is.
Yeah, Bama did the same thing with our management team. We had them on a rotation schedule. Half the team would report in 1 week and then the other half the next week. Because if you had a positive case, is what we're talking about, then you had your whole management team unavailable. And so that was a good process to have on the rotation.
Panelists, you have shared so much insight already. Amy, you shared the importance of leading with your heart. Tim, you shared some innovative ways that TTCU is listening to employees through surveys and in a variety of different ways.
Bailey, you mentioned the value of collaboration and leaning in to learn from one another across institutions. And then finally, Denise, you mentioned the importance of communicating in a variety of ways to ensure that messages are received and understood in a time where communication can be so difficult. And each of you have elevated the importance of flexibility during this time. Really just have one other quick question, and it's very open-ended. What other thoughts or learnings have you taken away from this time during the past few months that our questions haven't covered that you'd like to share with the group?
So this is Denise. I think one of the things that, and this has been brought up in many circles that I've talked about or with about pandemic, is that we've really become more empathetic and understanding our humanity. And I mean, I know we say human resources, but there are a lot of people that are in human resources that don't really truly live the human aspect of it. And I think with everything that's going around, we have seen a lot more grace and a lot more empathy for one another and providing for one another in a way that's been meaningful and much needed. And I hope that that kind of, my hope is that lives on and we see that growing across these big, massive collective impact type of things that we're trying to do right now.
Yeah, I'll I guess add to that I don't think that we're ever going to go back to the way things were exactly. It always takes a crisis to get us off of high center and to, we've been talking about doing things differently for a long time, but no, we don't have time to do that. And, we're too busy doing these other things. And then all of a sudden you have an emergency like this and it makes you do it. And then going forward, you do it differently from that point on. And I think there's every single organization's got lots of innovations that and creative solutions that they've implemented to workarounds and we thought that this policy was important in the past, but it's really not that important anymore. But it all revolves around innovation. It revolves around how you best serve your customer, how you take care of your team, and so it really has changed us a lot. I'll give you one personal example that I have an assistant who's had some health issues, and early on we had to make a decision to let this person work from home most of this year, and that's not been easy on me personally. I've been in my office. It's pretty safe here in my office. There's no big deal to be working from here, and I really would prefer this person to be here, but I had to set that aside, and I had to put somebody's personal safety and health ahead, and that wasn't an easy thing. It was the right thing to do, and I did the right thing, but it was a struggle at the same time. And I, it's just a small example. We all can think of, hundreds and hundreds of examples where this has had to take place, and we are doing better at taking care of one another now and loving one another, and I think that's a good outcome.
Yeah, that's really good, Tim. I have looked, at some of the, this pandemic is something we're experiencing globally, and definitely it's bringing us all closer together because we're all experiencing similar things. And this is an opportunity, I think, for us to become trusted leaders in our organizations. And when you have trust between your leadership and those who are on the front lines making the work happen, it doesn't do anything but propel your company forward. And so I agree that these decisions sometimes are the hard decisions, but when they're the right decision and you do them, it builds trust, and investing in trust is worth investing in.
Definitely.
Yeah, I tell you, I look at maybe it's the way I'm wired. Look at the positive side of things. And yes, this has been terrible. Not good for business. People lost their lives. On the flip side, I look at, I think a lot of barriers or walls have broken down on how we communicate, how often we communicate, what we talk about. I even think that started to pave a way or pave forward for us what happened during all this. It's been going on a long time, but in the George Floyd murder, things around that, because of this change in our communication, at least at Nordam and from our family with our people and the listening and the engagement, it set us up to have some very, very tough but very good conversations with our people on a subject that we hadn't really ever touched. A lot of HR people are on here. Race and things like that are places or things you don't talk about. And from the COVID breaking down walls and increasing communication, it set us up to have a better dialogue and listening tool and way to really start paving a better way forward for lots of things. Diversity, inclusion, and equity, our councils, and how we handle things. So just on the positive side, we've learned a lot and grown a lot and strengthened relationships with people on this phone call, as well as others around the community. But most importantly, with our own people, and that trust that you talk about, Amy, is something you earn. And when in tough times, it's definitely the most relied upon thing through all of it. Because as leaders, we're making decisions that impact so many. And I like what Denise, you said about the human side. I always joke with our HR team, and these humans, they need resources. It's human resources, but it's what it's why we exist. The world isn't the world without people, and every individual is an individual with a heart, and it's like I said earlier, life's about love, and it's something that we have to never get away from, and this is an opportunity to unlock that and unleash the power of that love.
I love looking at this challenging, uncertain time as an opportunity for us to think differently, an opportunity for us to be flexible, an opportunity for us to think differently about communication and how we are there for our people and moving forward as an organization. So I want to thank our panelists for taking time out of their day to lend us their thinking as we are all navigating a response to COVID and supporting our employees. So thank you so much. To our participants, if you could please, in the chat box, answer 2 questions for us. What is one thing you learned or one thing that changed your thinking based on today's call? And even more important, as we think about our next meeting, which is next Thursday at 3 p.m., what resources would you need to chart the course? We started this time talking about what we did in the spring, what challenges we're grappling with. Today we learned from industry leaders, business leaders, on how their organizations are managing COVID with school starting and how they're supporting employees with children. Now, next week, we're going to get more into the nuts and bolts of how we can move forward. And to do that in a responsive way, we would like to hear from you, the people who will be implementing such policies, procedures, and practices. So before you leave, Carlicia's going to close us out, but take the next couple of minutes to jot down in the chat box one thing you learned or one thing that changed your thinking. And definitely do not leave without telling us what resources you need from us and as we prepare for next week. Or resources you need, period.
Thank you, Ashley. You should have received, those of you that had registered to attend and were in our first session, some resources that were even shared on our very first call in terms of survey questions for your employees, should you want to learn more about the conditions that they're facing, to build solutions around those. We look forward to being able to continue to share resources with you that can be helpful on your journey, but we need to hear from you today of what those resources are as we prepare for our final session of charting the course to ensure that we get that information over to you. Again, I would like to thank our panelists who joined us today, really focusing in to me on the power of putting people first, ensuring safety, and investing in our community. This effort for us to fight COVID-19, to ensure that students are safe, protected, well, and learning and thriving, requires for us all to come together during this time of crisis. And from the leaders we heard from today, I couldn't be more proud of the efforts that are underway in our city right now. We're looking forward to our final call next week. As was mentioned, it will be August 20th at 3 p.m., where we're charting the course. We're looking ahead to school reentry. So if you remember in our first call, we laid the foundation. We found out more about strategies that took place in the spring, how many of the businesses began to pivot, and some of the interventions that you all had planned. Today, we envision solutions. We heard from individuals who are out there trying out concepts and what is happening right now and what is some of the mindset that is going into that space. And in our final session, we'd love to equip you with the resources that you need to chart the course and to support our community, our employees, our students during this time. I'd also, again, like to thank Ashley Phillipson, Dr. Laura Latta, and our guru behind the scenes, Jessica Smith, the Senior Director of Education and Collaborative Action at ImpactTulsa, for supporting with this session today. We look forward to seeing you next week and look forward to getting your responses to those questions in the chat box so that we can plan our final session around your needs. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.